While it's not a world-famous story in the traditional sense of a fictional narrative, the most well-known and impactful historical account involving Adolf Hitler is, of course, the story of his rise to power, the initiation of World War II, and the Holocaust. This isn't a single neat narrative with a clear protagonist and antagonist in the literary sense, but rather a complex, horrifying, and pivotal period in human history. Here's an outline of that world-renowned historical narrative, focusing on Hitler's central role: the shadow of the swastika, the rise and fall of Adolf Hitler. The story begins in the aftermath of World War I, a time of economic despair and political instability in Germany. A disillusioned and embittered former corporal named Adolf Hitler, possessing a mesmerizing, if hateful, oratorical skill, began to gain traction in the beer halls of Munich. He joined the fledgling National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP, or Nazi Party, and quickly rose through its ranks. His message resonated with a populace yearning for a return to national pride and economic stability. Hitler blamed Germany's woes on the Treaty of Versailles, the Weimar Republic, and, most virulently, on Jewish people, whom he scapegoated for all of Germany's problems. His book, Mein Kampf, written during a brief imprisonment, laid out his racist ideology and expansionist ambitions. Through shrewd political maneuvering, intimidation, and the exploitation of public grievances, Hitler became Chancellor of Germany in 1933. He swiftly consolidated power, dismantling democratic institutions, suppressing opposition, and establishing a totalitarian state. The swastika, once a fringe symbol, became the omnipresent emblem of the new German Reich. Once in power, Hitler began to implement his radical agenda. He rearmed Germany in defiance of the Versailles Treaty, withdrew from the League of Nations, and pursued an aggressive foreign policy. His first territorial grabs, the remilitarization of the Rhineland, the annexation of Austria, the Anschluss, and the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia, were met with appeasement from European powers desperate to avoid another war. However, Hitler's ambitions knew no bounds. On September 1, 1939, Germany invaded Poland, a move that finally triggered declarations of war from Britain and France, igniting World War II. What followed was a brutal conflict that engulfed the globe, marked by lightning-fast blitzkrieg tactics and unprecedented destruction. As the war raged, Hitler's regime embarked on its most horrific crime: the systematic extermination of European Jews, Roma, homosexuals, disabled people, and political dissidents, the Holocaust. Concentration and extermination camps like Auschwitz-Birkenau became industrial sites of death, a testament to the depths of human cruelty fueled by an ideology of racial purity and hatred. Initially, the tide of war seemed to favor Hitler's forces. Germany conquered much of Western Europe, including France, and launched a devastating air campaign against Britain. However, the invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941, Operation Barbarossa, proved to be a turning point. The brutal Eastern Front became a meat grinder, draining German resources and manpower. The entry of the United States into the war after the attack on Pearl Harbor further shifted the balance of power. As the Allied forces closed in from both the West and the East, Hitler's grip on reality deteriorated. He retreated into his bunker in Berlin, issuing increasingly irrational orders to a crumbling army. Faced with inevitable defeat, and with Soviet troops closing in on his final stronghold, Adolf Hitler committed suicide on April 30, 1945, bringing an end to his tyrannical reign and the most devastating war in human history. The legacy of Hitler and the Third Reich remains a stark warning about the dangers of unchecked power, racial hatred, and extremist ideologies. His story is not one of a hero or a villain in a fictional tale, but a chilling historical account of how one man's destructive ambition could plunge the world into unfathomable darkness.